So, no, I wouldn't say I have a passion for HR.
Welcome back to Human Resources for the People. It's a human capital revolution. Today, we're going to be talking about hiring employees in the country of Colombia. I think this is an interesting and exciting thing to discuss. I have been doing a whole series on it. Check it out in my playlist. I have a international human resources playlist. I'm interested in comparative HR, and I dig kind of deep into it. The first one up is from this article from Holland and Knight called Hiring Employees in Colombia. It's written by these people. And the first one off, it kind of does a question and answer, and you can find the article down below, but there are no restrictions or prohibitions regarding background checks on applicants, but you have to give an authorization. If they don't give it, then then that's fine. I think that's interesting. I think that means that, well, I imagine that it's one of those situations where the people who are applying for jobs are not stuck in prison. I don't know. I think it's surprising that they don't have any controls on this. For me as an American, it's pretty important that we have a control on this, and we have quite a few. So I think that's an interesting concept in Colombia. And it gets a little weirder here because they allow for, sort of unilateral medical examinations, and it's mandatory to require a medical exam prior to signing the contract. And this seems very common throughout former colonies. I've seen this in quite a bit of countries where they require medical exams prior to signing a contract, including Nigeria and much of Western Africa, at least, and in South America. Uh, you're not allowed to do HIV and pregnancy tests, which is interesting. I mean, you you can find out everything about them except for these things. I don't really understand that, to be totally honest. They can drug and alcohol test as much as they want, and it can't be the sole reason for not hiring an applicant. So that's interesting as well. I mean, they can test them, but they can't say, "Hey, we're not going to hire you as a result." I don't know what you would do with that information when something like that happens. People from Colombia let me know. I mean, do people? It sounds like they drug test, but does anyone actually use it? Is it valuable? Is there anything to it? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm really interested in that, and I want to hear more from everyone. The next one is, again, absolutely crazy to me, and especially in a fairly diverse country like Colombia. It says, is there any legal requirements to give preference in hiring to or not to discriminate against particular people or groups of people? So, no, you can discriminate as much as you want in Colombia, but you do get benefits for people. But it doesn't appear that it's particularly based on race at all. You get benefits if they're in a situation of displacement, which I imagine that's like a refugee from like Venezuela or something of that nature, or in the process of reintegration. I assume that means reintegration from prison, or if they have a disability, or if they're employees under 28 years of age, or women over 40 years of age who have been unemployed for 1 year, which I actually like that. I think that removes some of the potential discrimination that could come from pregnancy. But I can't believe that it allows discrimination. Again, I need to hear from the Colombian folks. Is this something that's happening? Let me know down below. The next one is weird for Americans, not weird for the rest of the world. It asks if there must be a written employment contract. Now, Many Americans will tell you that they're on a quote unquote contract. That's not true generally. I mean, there are people who are on contract. I mean, that does exist. But generally, when they say contract, they're referring to a job offer. And job offers often specifically say that this is not a contract and they're not considered to be contracts. So you can't really say that. But anyway, most of the world does do written contracts, but there is a term like terms like probationary period, fixed term contract, integral salary scheme, and non-salary payments require written evidence. So, if, for example, the business says that there's a probationary period and it's X amount of time, you do have to prove it, and that's what makes it a little bit interesting for my money. I'm pretty curious what that means, but you don't need to do a written contract in Colombia, and and that is really critical and important to know. Finally, this one again is one that I see quite often in colonial states. I'd love to know if, for example, Western Europe or elsewhere has these regulations, but temporary staffing is fairly highly regulated. There's quite a few laws, and only temporary staffing agencies authorized by the Ministry of Labor are allowed to provide such services. In America, if there are any laws, it would surprise me. I don't believe I know of any laws that specifically handle temporary agencies. I don't think we care at all. But in post colonial states, I see it quite frequently, especially in the ones that I've mentioned before, like West Africa as well as South America. It seems to be really rife. Now, there's probably other examples of this that I'm not aware of, but it's really interesting. And you can only do temp agencies when there are occasional or accidental or transitory tasks, when necessary to replace personnel on vacation, sick, or maternity leave, as well as to address increases in production that aren't going to last more than 6 months. And so that's unique. I mean, there are clear and firm rules, whereas many companies in America will just use temp agencies as the sort of default to bring someone into the company. Let me know what you think down below. Please, if you're from Colombia, drop some comments. Let me know how close this is, if there's anything you disagree with, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye, guys.